Welcome to today's lesson, which is about writing expressions for percentages. The goal of today's lesson is that you can solve percent problems by writing and solving equations. So first, let's start with some vocabulary. Some words you're going to hear are variable, coefficient, and solution. So here's an example: 3x equals 12. And x is the variable, and the coefficient of the variable is the number immediately to the left of it. 3 times x, it's always going to be some number multiplied by the variable, and so 3 is the coefficient. And the solution is the value for x that makes the equation true. So 3x equals 12. If we want to isolate x on its own, we need to remove the 3. So it's 3 times x. The inverse operation is divide by 3. So divide by 3 here and on the other side as well. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So we're left with 1x is equal to 12 divided by 3, which is 4. And that is the solution. 4 is the solution. So write and solve an equation. So we're told that 70% of x is equal to 100. And x is some number. 70%, we need to convert this to either a fraction or a decimal to work with it in an equation. Make that an easier fraction to work with by dividing by the greatest common factor, which is 10. So we'd get is an equivalent fraction, which would be easier to work with. And a decimal to represent 7/10 would be 0.7. So I can choose any of these for my equation. I'm going to choose the fraction 7/10. And I'm going to 7/10 multiplied by x I want to know what is x, what's the value of x. So I've got to isolate x, and I want to have 1x there, not 7/10 x. So what I need to do is multiply by the reciprocal of 7/10, which is 10/7. I'm going to do it in green, so okay. And I've got to do the same to the other side. 10/7 times 100. And now when I multiply 10 over 7 times 7 over 10, I get 70 over 70 x, and 70 divided by 70 is 1. So that's x equals 10 times 100 is 1000 divided by 7. And I get 142.86 when I round it. I'm going to leave it with 2 decimal places. So the number is 142.86. I want to check this. And what I can do, 70% of x is equal to 100. So I can say, is 70% of 142.86 equal to 100? And I can use my calculator, or I can get 0.7 of 142.86, and I can see that yes, it is equal to 100. So this is the correct answer. So here we're going to write an equation to represent a situation. Charlize has 80 grams of flour, which is 40% of what's required for her cookie recipe. How much flour does the recipe require? So my unknown is how much flour, my unknown quantity. How much flour? does the recipe require? So I'm going to define my variable. Let x equal the amount of flour the recipe requires. Okay, and Charlize has 80 grams of flour, which is 40% of what's needed. So 40%, I'm going to say it could be 40 over 100, or an easier fraction, an equivalent fraction would be 4 out of 10, or a decimal 0.4. So either of those three can represent 40%. I'm going to take the 4 out of 10. So 40% of what's required is 4/10. What's required is x. 4/10 of x equals 80 grams. Now, I don't want 4/10, I want x. So I've got to isolate x. I've got to remove that 4/10 from x. To do that, I need to multiply by the reciprocal of 4/10. I'm going to multiply by 10/4. 10/4 times 4/10 x is equal to 10/4. Here's the reciprocal. You've got to multiply both sides by it, times 80. And 10/4 times 4/10 is 40/40, which is 1x, is equal to, and I'm going to do some simplifying here. That's 80 over 1. I'm going to divide the numerator and the denominator both by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 80 divided by 4 is 20. Just to make the numbers easier to work with. So now I have on top of the fraction bars, 10 times 20 is 200, and 1 times 1 is 1. So that's 200, and let's find the units, grams of flour. 200 grams is how much flour she needs. I want to check my answer. Is 40%, I'm going to use a decimal, 0.4 of 200 equal to 80, and I multiply 200 by 0.4 and I get, that's a question mark there, 80 equals 80. So I say yes, my answer is correct. So here we will write and solve another equation. 40% of some number is 76. What is the number? Or 200%, sorry. 200% of a number is 76. What is the number? So 200% is 200 divided by 100. Any percent is divided by 100, which can be simplified down to 20 over 10, or 2 over 1, or just 2. So the number I'm going to define, let x equal the number. We don't know what the number is, so that's your unknown number. So 20 or 200% of the number is equal to 76. So 200% I'm representing by this 2 here. So 2. The number I'm representing with x. So 2x equals 76. Now I have an equation. I can solve it. 2x means 2 multiplied by x, or x multiplied by 2. I want just x, so I've got to divide by 2. 2x divided by 2 and 76 divided by 2. You've got to do the same on both sides. 2 divided by 2 is 1, so I'm left with x equals 76 divided by 2, which is 38. And let's go back and see if there are units, and they're not. It's just a number. So x equals 38. The number is 38. So to summarize, define the variable, let x equal whatever it is. You saw in this example, x was the unknown number. You saw here that x was the amount of flour the recipe requires and I should actually have said here the amount of flour in grams that the recipe requires. So define your variable and write the units in the answer. There were no units in this one, but here it was 200 grams. How much flour? 200 grams of flour. So today you saw how to write and solve equations to solve percent problems. And that's the end of today's lesson.